For the final project, I interviewed my mother, Bhavna Misra, also known by her name used in America, Deepa Misra. When conducting this interview and conducting the analysis after, the themes that are tied into the interview are pulling factors, community, and identity. Three themes. The first theme that was most apparent was pulling factors. When people are immigrating to the United States, there are many pulling factors that play an important role when they are leaving their home country. Pulling factors meaning things that are drawing a person to leaving their home country, something that's appealing about the other country. But sometimes those factors can be true, but also not completely positive. When people from different countries take a look at the United States, they usually have a set of ideals or expectations from the US that can end up playing a factor to the decision of leaving their home country. Bhavna had a unique experience immigrating to the United States compared to the popular expectations, where she saw the benefits of living in the US, such as safety, population, and hygiene. One of the more negative experiences Bhavna went through was not being able to work due to restrictions from the H-1B visa policies. The comparisons I saw between Bhavna's experience and an excerpt from Erica Lee, Making of an Asian America, was around the concept of Sea of Broken Dreams. Stated in the textbook on pages 297 to 298, it was stated, many were highly educated professionals in their own right, but had come with H-4 visas as spouses of husbands working in the expanding IT industries with temporary H-1B visas. Caught in a net of visa restrictions that prevented them from working, these career women who had once been able to support themselves and nurtured their own careers found themselves isolated, depressed, and without purpose. This is from Lee, page 297 to 298, end quote. Bhavna was unfortunately caught in the same net of restrictions that led her to having a partially soured first-hand experience when she immigrated to the United States. Another comparison I noticed was due to restrictions women that arrived from immigration could not work because they had to provide and support their households in different ways. For example, it was stated on page 297, much of the success of these enterprises relies upon the unpaid labor of immigrant women in the family who clean rooms, do the laundry, and perform reception and office tasks on top of the household labor they perform for their own families, end quote. Lee, page 296. Bhavna had to go through a similar situation because she could not contribute by a formal job that brought in income. She had to dedicate herself to being a homemaker and support the family through taking care of her children and obviously household labor, doing tasks besides a traditional income job. This became a mixed introduction to the United States and different in comparison to the very positive and popular pulling factors. Another theme that was relevant in this interview was community. Bhavna also stated she had no issues with other Asian Americans living in the United States. Ironically, Bhavna stated she had a few issues with other Indian Asians upon her arrival. This could be a connection to the examples of all the issues that Asian Americans had with each other stated throughout the material. It was stated on page 296 how Asian Indians immigrated to the United States looking for work based on the United States' need for high-skilled labor. They were permitting people to enter the country under H-1B visas. Quote, and almost half of all computer-related H-1B visas were given to workers from India at the turn of the 21st century, end quote. This became the main portal through which many Asian American families and communities were able to be built within the United States. It was also stated on page 3 from module 14 that professional classes in South Asia, East Asia come to the U.S. to work, foster high-tech industries in the U.S. This is how Siddhartha Misra, or Bhavna's husband, first came to the United States. Bhavna became a part of the community of spouses and wives that arrived in America based on their husbands' H-1B visas and were caught in the sea of broken dreams. The last theme that was relevant to this interview was identity. Bhavna stated in the interview that her identity can be presented as an American Indian, or could also be stated as an Indian living in America. From a traditional and practical standpoint, Bhavna kept all of her practices of being a follower of Hinduism the central or main religion of India, Hinduism being the most popular and main religion of India, till this day. Besides being a follower of Hinduism, besides eating beef. So eating beef was the tradition Bhavna chose to forego. Bhavna chose to not eat beef, which is not allowed in Hinduism, because cows in India are sacred. and are not bred to be eaten, whereas cows in the U.S. are bred and grown to be ultimately eaten. Bhavna chose to not forego her cultural identity when moving to the U.S. Bhavna decided to hold on to her culture because it was part of her identity and she did not want to let go of her roots. She only gave up dietary restrictions. This situation is very similar to a quote by Lalit Patel stated in Module 15 by Professor Carney, New Asian American Communities. The module's name was New Asian American Communities. Page 4, quote, nowadays the global environment, it used to be more of a melting pot, and nowadays the situation has changed. Your identity as a community has to be cultivated. Each community has a different interest, different expectations. The Indian community has different interests than the Chinese, Germans, Irish, or Mexican. This is similar because Bhavna chose to adopt a different lifestyle than other Asian American communities. Bhavna chose to identify herself as an Indian American, where she wanted to stay rooted to her culture and tradition while living in a country that is foreign in terms of geography and tradition to her home country. Overall, Bhavna had an overall good experience immigrating to the United States as an Asian Indian from India. But her journey did have its own difficulties, which highlighted the problems other Asian Indian women have faced in their journeys to the US as well. Thank you.